Hello and welcome back. Before we get to part 2, Real Talk, please allow us to fulfill our capitalistic duty and plug our Patreon, the Contrarian Supplements.
That's right. For a small fee, you too can help the Contrarians rage on.
We have tiers ranging from just $1 to $10. It all depends on how much content you can handle.
Starting at $1, it's a Travoltis tier, which gets you access to new bonus episodes focusing on a new movie every month, as well as access to the patron chat. Join other patrons in making fun of our opinions.
Moving up to $3 is the Winonis tier, which unlocks access to our pre-recording notes, our video reviews, and our spin-off show, Contrarians After Hours.
That's a more laid-back space where we talk about other things we've been watching, reading, playing, thinking about. Sometimes it's related to the movies being covered in the main feed, but it usually isn't.
If you want to be part of those patrons who help us shape the show by telling us which movies to tackle, that's when you sign up for the $5 tier, the Embries, and the $10, the Gads.
Finally, all supplement subscribers, regardless of the tier, get access to our archive of special patron projects. Head over to patreon.com/contrarianprime now to join.
Be sure to listen through the end of the episode to find out what's coming up to the Contrarian Supplements this month. Now, it's time for some Real Talk.
I know you. I know all of your names. Since you was born, I watched you grow up. And you have grown into rapists. You dishonor yourselves. You dishonor your dead.
What do we do now?
We're done.
We have our fun, Julio, but it's not a bad thing here to check in on what Steven Spielberg's doing. I mean, I looked up his age. He's 78. He's an old man, and I'm not going to doom and gloom it, but one of a kind. Not sure there'll ever be another. I don't know how there could be with the way he profoundly, him and George Lucas changed things kind of forever in the 70s. So that being said, it is kind of funny the movies we've done are Saving Private Ryan, Jaws, and now West Side Story entered into the mix. You would think for our formula we'd want to have more fun with something like Crystal Skull or
Hook.
And if I remember correctly, Catch Me If You Can, it might be that's like a high 90s, I think, on the old RT. But nope, here today, 2021's box office bomb. Again, I don't believe really any fault of his own here, but Señor Spielbergo, West Side Story, starring Ansel Elgort and Rachel Ziegler.
But really, starring Ariana DeBose and I think it's David Alvarez. That's the name of Bernardo.
Correct. And I agree with that. The screenplay for this one was by Tony Kushner, and we ran down the list of honoraries in the first half there. Before we get to negative quotes, Julio, we did tease that, I mean, our longtime listeners or our regulars will know exactly why we're doing this, but in case someone's just checking this episode willy-nilly, why are we talking about 2021's West Side Story?
This is West Side Story 2021, in parentheses, Alex's Punishment. So last year, as we've been doing for several years now, we participated in the live stream for The Cure. And as we usually do in our segment, we're trying to raise money for cancer research. And we'll probably be pimping our segment for this year's live stream for The Cure before too long. But last year, we had the different tiers, the different amounts of donations we're hoping to get. And so if we got $250 in donations, I think that was it, we would do the movie 3 from Hell on the show. And that was a punishment for me. Even though, Alex, if I recall correctly, you're not wild about the movie, but the whole point...
I can't even remember. I think we were just throwing out movie titles to try to rib the other one. But yeah.
I think that you are pretty convinced that is not a movie I will enjoy. And so that was the whole point of it. And so then when it came time for the $500 tier, I retaliated and I said, well, I know how you feel about Ansel Elgort. How do you feel about Ansel Elgort in a Steven Spielberg musical?
A 2.5 hour one at that.
Yes. Yeah. I also know how you feel about long movies. So as a $500 tier, we hit that. So that's the good stuff. We almost made it to the next level. 750 was Hamilton, Alex. So we could have done like 2 fresh musicals in a row. You would have died. It would have been worth it. But I think we were like $50 short or something when it was all said and done. Moral of the story, guys. If you like to see Alex and I suffer, then, donate on our segment. Who knows? Well, we still haven't come up with the ideas for this year. So anything could happen.
Yeah, I am certain I would have had a much harder time with Hamilton than this. So y'all missed out on that
Hamilton
one.
is like non-stop singing. So yes, I believe so. Anyway, celebrating that we raised money for a good cause and a good time was had at the time, because that was the year that we were singing whenever we hit a certain amount of money. And so it's appropriate that now in this movie, there's a lot of singing. Before we get into the quotes, Alex, I don't remember if I asked you, but it's extremely relevant to the conversation that is to follow. Have you watched the original West Side Story from the 60s?
I don't know. If I have, it would have been a long time. I know the story. So I don't know if I went to like a version of it somewhere on stage at one point. It's so ingratiated into, I mean, obviously global, but American pop culture to a degree that like the snap thing. Like I remember like season 2 of The Office when Jim's like thinks Dwight and Michael are going to fight. He just starts like snapping, and it's not one of those things that the joke has to be explained, at least to me, because it's just like, oh yeah, it's West Side Story. So maybe I did see the movie at some point. I definitely want to revisit it after watching this. It has. Does it have the exact same runtime?
It might. That one has an intermission.
Well, used to be better, Julio. That's why. But maybe when I was young, like I said, I don't know. I just know the story. But the poster, like for the original film, is also like the poster that was used, popularized through like the stage adaptations of it throughout the 80s and 90s. So yeah, I can't sit here and flat out cite any moments from the original one, but familiar with the story, yes.
Yeah, and I think even if maybe something else that might be happening is that even if you didn't watch the play or watch the movie, on top of the pop culture references, there's also the music, because I think that some of the songs are just also pretty iconic, and you can kind of like probably hear them, even if it was when you got in an elevator or something.
Yeah. I Feel Pretty, I mean, being one of the top ones.
Yep. Anyway, let's get these rotten quotes out of the way, Alex. Some people didn't like the new West Side Story. Do they have a point? We'll find out.
In English.
Sí, English. It's hard to...
Yeah, I bet it is.
We're going to start with Michael Collery from the Niagara Gazette, who says director Spielberg and his screenwriter Tony Kushner needed to find thematic points in the original that demanded to be explored and amplified. This is not the case with their West Side Story. Did this guy not think that Spielberg and Kushner did enough to make the story relevant to today?
What did he watch, I wonder?
Yeah. PJ Navarro from Patrick Navarro. I guess it's Patrick J. Navarro. It's hard to see what attracted Spielberg to the project, and thus what he was trying to project to his audience.
One of the most celebrated musicals in history. I mean, that's kind of interesting of putting your own spin on it. And then also, yeah, I don't know how you could watch this at the tail end of 2021 and not kind of see the relevancy that it poses. Which, of course, the fun part is this has gotten a lot worse since 2021.
Yes. If people had gone and seen West Side Story in 2021, maybe,
they all would have united over how much Ansel Elgort sucks. That would be like the leading thing that kept us all together.
Yes. Jets and sharks all together.
That's like our peace treaty. All right, let's get rid of this Elgort fucker and we'll all be good, all right?
I think also, I'm pretty sure that this is Spielberg's first, probably only now, musical. That is, you're like in your 70s making movies and you have all the resources. You're like, what haven't I done yet? A musical. Let's do it. Next, Beth Accomando from kpbs.org says, Spielberg gives the film occasional moments, but nothing to convince me that he knows much about musicals or New York City. Wow. I've never been to New York. I know New York through the movies. So, I mean, take my opinion with a grain of salt. But watching this, I was like, I guess it's New York. I mean, it didn't strike me as this absolute disconnect from reality.
No, it didn't exist to give you like the fucking massive Jason Takes Manhattan or like, that's my immediate go-to because the beginning of that movie is the New York skyline. Much like truly any movie of the 80s or, 70s, 80s, early 90s that took place in New York wanted to immediately establish that it's in New York City, baby. It's big sets, I don't think the idea of it having to be in 1950s New York, I guess it's important to some people. It's just at no point was I really questioning the setting. It was more just like, okay, that's where they are. It is not as egregious, and God knows I love The Last of Us, but that fucking city in Canada that they try to tell us is Austin in the first episode, it is not as egregious as that.
Yeah, there weren't enough protesters on any side of the road. Do you think Beth Accomando was just missing that shot of the Statue of Liberty? She's like, it's not New York unless you show us the Statue of Liberty.
yeah, exactly. I don't buy it.
All right, we're going to close with Laura Potier from We Have a Hulk. God, I need to visit that website. And Laura says, watch Spielberg's West Side Story for the supporting cast and some visually compelling numbers. Return to Robert Wise's 1961 film for the superior iteration. Obviously, even if you watched that movie, Alex, your memory is hazy enough that I wouldn't ask you which one's best or which one you like best because it would be unfair to you and it would be unfair to the movies. I have seen the original West Side Story a number of times. It was one of my dad's favorite movies, maybe his favorite musical.
Really?
Yeah. So I was familiar with the music even before I watched the movie, and then I remember watching the movie. I was way too young to appreciate it, but just watching the movie, we're like, okay, I don't get it, but sure.
It's the musical Chainsaw.
Yeah. But yeah, it wouldn't be unusual for my dad to like break into song from time to time, and one of the songs that he would sing would be either Maria or Tonight, and so I already had like that in my head. And then I want to say maybe 10 years ago or so, at some point Cinemark did like one of those Fathom events and they showed West Side Story, so I screened it. Yeah, actually, I think I screened it with Kelly, and we just, I remember just having a really good time because it was just the two of us. So we were laughing and making fun of the movie while also just enjoying it. But, just some of the stuff in that original movie has dated in a way that, I mean, I don't know, 50 years from now, you might watch Spielberg's version and be like, well, this is cute, but it also feels dated. Like I watched the original West Side Story and I can appreciate the music and I can appreciate the performances, but there's also a lot of stuff that just feels like, well, it worked at the time, but it doesn't blow me away filmmaking wise.
Yeah.
Even though I understand that it definitely was a thing back then. It also might be a matter of preference. There were a lot of quotes when I was going through the rotten ones in Rotten Tomatoes that were constantly saying, yeah, this is okay, but it's not the original. This is okay, but it's not Robert Wise's.
That sounds like me with any remake.
Yes.
Yeah.
So maybe we will revisit this specific point, Alex, when you finally watch the original and have an opinion one way or the other. But I can tell you, and just like my opening salvo here, is that Spielberg's is superior, I would say, in almost every aspect. And that is not to demean the original movie, which I think is, again, really good. It is even great at times, right? But Rita Moreno is fantastic. I think that's probably the biggest parallel is watching Ariana DeBose in this movie playing Anita is kind of how you feel when you're watching Rita Moreno playing Anita in that original Robert Wise version. They're both just like scene stealers every time they're there, every time they sing, every time they dance. George Chakiris, he's great too. And I think they, without getting into it just yet, I think they also benefit from having better written characters or characters that are more interesting. So they're fantastic. And, the music, the choreography, but the way it's shot, like an old timey musical. And it's like a lot of wide shots, and the camera is a little more like chill. And I prefer what Spielberg is doing, his approach here, where he's just like, no, I'm going to shoot it like a Spielberg movie.
Yeah.
And the performances, and yes, we will get to Ansel Elgort, but the performances feel a little more of our time, even though it's still set back in the 60s. The guy that plays Riff, we didn't even call him by name, I think, in Contrarian's Corner. It's Feist. What's his first name? Mike Feist, who you can probably watch now because it's streaming now in Challengers. He's part of that love triangle. It's Zendaya, Mike Feist, and some other dude. So, he went on to do other things. But he's if I remember correctly, he's a Broadway guy, and his riff is, and my apologies to the guy that plays Riff in the original movie, but his riff is just head and shoulders over that performance. It feels like he feels like a guy that would be in a gang. When you look at the Jets in the original movie, they just feel like preppy kids that, you can't believe that they're dangerous. And here, when you watch them they look like they're really like a force that is posing a real threat to this neighborhood and this community and so on. So I guess TLDR, like, I like the Spielberg version so much better. Apologies to my dad, who, of course, he just, I wonder if he would feel the same way if he watched it, and apologies to everybody that holds the original at an altar, because I understand, why you would, but I think that this version is just amazing. And so when somebody asks a question, why would Steven Spielberg remake West Side Story? My answer is because he made it better. That's just, it's a no-brainer. You get one of the best directors ever, and you give him a story that's so powerful, especially, under our current circumstances, the ones back in 2020, 2021, and now, and back in the 60s, and you just let him do his thing. And final point before I pass the buck to you, Alex, kind of joked about it in Contrarian's Corner, but really, I understand that's how we did things at the time, but Maria being played by Natalie Wood versus Maria being actually played by a Hispanic character, that's a huge thing.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And so that alone, I would say, and that's why you remake West Side Story, because, maybe it's time to tell the story and actually cast it properly. Nothing against Natalie Wood, but man, I don't think she even does her own singing in the Robert Wise version.
This is my first time dancing in New York City, so you tell me. Is it okay?
But anyway, I blabbed. I already showed my cards saying how much I like this movie. It's your turn, man, because you came in with some chips on your shoulders. So I'm curious if the power of Señor Spielbergo was able to help you look past Ansel Elgort, maybe even reassess his talent.
Well, I don't know about that, but also at the same time, you never, if you aim for the king, you better not miss. Real quick though, I don't know how many other times you've brought up movies your dad really liked. Was really into musicals and stuff?
Yes, even though we never really talk about it in a way that, and it's obviously I talk about movies a lot more now than I did when I was growing up with him. So it was, but yeah, Singing in the Rain was another big one, and that's another song that he would just start singing. the titular, Singing in the Rain. That's another song that I just had in my head since before I even was aware what the movie was about, and much less watched the movie. So yeah, he was a big musical fan. I don't think that we ever went and saw a musical on stage. I've done that with my mom, once I was an adult, but no, we watched a number of musicals, movies. We probably watched Chicago together. No, by then I already moved here. Evita was a big one. We watched Evita together. He bought me the soundtrack for Christmas before I even watched the movie. Yeah, he knew what he was doing, and yeah, we would just always laugh. I don't think he ever sang any of the Evita songs, but he would always talk about Antonio Banderas' performance, and so on. So yeah, he was definitely more into musicals than I guess you would expect the average dad, right?
Right on. Big Jonathan Pryce fan too with Evita, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Ansel Elgort sucks, but that doesn't. For all the jokes and whatnot, and the jesting I do about movie length and musicals and shit, I at no point found myself coming close to struggling with any of this. I found it entertaining. About 30 seconds into it with the actual appearance, I was like, "Yep, this is Steven Spielberg. He knows what he's doing," because the movie's fucking gorgeous and like the sets, and obviously, as much as I like the thought of it, he doesn't do the choreography and shit like that. But yeah, everything about it, presentation wise, is just on the fucking money. It looks amazing, and the majority of the acting is really solid. And but yeah, all the props in the world to the technical aspects of this. The music's great. Ansel Elgort is not a leading man.
What is it about? Let's elaborate, because Baby Driver.
He's got a dumb face, and like he just has that blank, 1,000-yard stare. Look, I say this all the time when I'm going in on people that have no like public perception of their personality or anything. He could be a wonderful gentleman and a great guy. Cool. I don't buy you as a leading man. Baby Driver is different in that I just don't think that movie's good, like really at all. This I really enjoyed, and when he was on screen, I was like, "Can we get someone else on screen, please?" When he's delivering like all his dramatic lines and shit, I felt like the scene in Wayne's World 2 where it's like, I understand this is just a bit character, but can't we get a better actor than this? Can
someone kill Tony already, please?
That's when he's the best. At the end, when he's freaking out and he gets shot in his like dying scene, that's the best. And I'm not saying that in the morbid sense of like, oh, he died, but like that's when he's at his best in this movie. He's obviously extremely good looking, and by the sounds of it, has some pipes.
I was about to say, at the very least, you can give him that, right? You mentioned in the Contrarian corner, I couldn't tell if you were serious or not. He can sing.
Yes, and that's something I cannot take away, nor will I criticize someone for in this. It's like, yeah, fucking get it, dog. If you can sing, get out there and show it off. That's even that we joke about Russell Crowe and Les Mis. Still, he's not good, but I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't sing for millions of people around the world to see. So the fact that Elgort here does so and sounds good on him, man. But I don't find him interesting. There is kind of the idea of he's just really hot. So here you go. It seemed as though we definitely got past that for a while. Because don't get me wrong, there's a shit ton of really hot people that are great actors. Rachel McAdams is like one of my favorite actresses ever. And she's, if I ever saw her, I would just turn to a puddle of mush. But it seems like we're kind of dribbling back in some of the 80s, 90s Hollywood, the propensity for let's just get good looking people on screen. We talked about in our last episode, Marilyn Monroe, one of the most strikingly beautiful humans that's ever lived, but could fucking, when she showed up and got her lines right, she could pull her weight and deliver. How
many takes does Ansel Elgort get?
I would kind of hope that this kid, he's not a kid, he's in his 30s. Man, he's got a baby face. I would hope that he carries himself like Sam Worthington and is just like an insufferable prick that has like really no grounds for being that way. That would make me respect him so much more.
What? I thought you were going to say that you would hope that at least he was a consummate professional, always on time, knows his lines, hits his marks.
I kid. But just this idea that had, the kid who has Baby Driver and West Side Story just all of a sudden thinks he's fucking Tom Cruise, walking around. I hate to even in just like a joking way shit on this kid so much, but it's I don't care for him, but elsewhere in the movie, there's a lot of things that I do think are great.
Well, just to close it and kind of transition to something else, though, you're not alone, Alex. Like when I was going through the Rotten quotes, there was a lot of, the movie's great, but Ansel Elgort is miscast. and Ansel Elgort doesn't belong there, and so on. So it's not just you. I think that there is a group of people, at least, that don't like him, or at the very least don't like him in this movie. I am not one of them, but I also...
Do you want him in a Marvel movie?
I mean, if you cast him as Cyclops, I might have something to say about that.
Oh my God.
As in, like, I think he's too bland. I agree with you. He's bland, but I think that his blandness works in this movie somewhat. But that's the... Look, I have the same problem. I have a Tony problem. And that problem, I have it with the original movie too. And maybe you'll share it when you watch it. I think that everybody in the movie is more interesting than Tony. And that's partly because in the original and in this one, they cast a bland dude that can sing and can dance and has like the presence, right? Like, you get why Maria would be attracted to him, and you get why Bernardo would be threatened by him. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that he's still kind of he's pretty vanilla. He gets some really good songs. When he's singing Maria, I think that, man, Spielberg is doing wonders with the camera and that. So it's not just Ansel Elgort singing, but it's like, oh, but look how cool everything looks. Yeah. And because the kid has a good voice, then, it's actually kind of a magical number.
Maria, say it loud and there's music playing. Say it soft and it's almost like praying. Maria, I'll never stop saying Maria.
But in the end, like the character of Tony, I wonder if they ever make West Side Story again, like I said, in like 20 years or however long, can you make it to where he is actually dangerous, right? Like, there is an edge to him that, he doesn't have to be Riff, but he has to be believably some guy that used to get in trouble, and just because he spent a year in prison doesn't mean that he comes out and he's just this like angel that, that looks like this guy, and so I think that the characterization of Tony, regardless of who is playing him, if you just cast somebody that is kind of bland looking, and then you contrast him against every other character in the movie that's so much more colorful and lively, Bernardo, Anita, the cops, the Jets, the Sharks, everybody, Valentina, which, by the way, in the original, it's Doc. It's the dude that owns the drugstore. But anyway, so I think that that's a problem. And then on top of that, I think the story doesn't do him any favors. I don't know if there is a way that you can get me to side with Tony and Maria in the last part of the movie. Do you have that problem, or are you a little more forgiving of this youth romance? And you're like, they're just stupid kids,
Yeah, young people are dumb typically when it comes to like being blinded by dumb is intense, naive. And when you're young, goddamn, dude, I remember the first girl I thought I was in love with, and it's like you've never felt anything like that before, so you're like, this is it.
Did you kill her brother?
I did not kill her brother. So for the purposes of the story, I kind of I kind of ride along with it. If this is real life, I'd be like, get the fuck out of here. Like, So yeah, this is a story that obviously deals with some pretty serious issues that are, like I said, if you have the intelligence to not just take it at surface level and actually like see into what this is trying to say, it's just as relevant today, sadly. But at the same time, it's a play, it's a movie, it's a musical. Some of the machinations that get us from S to T to U, that type of thing there towards the end or in the middle, it's I kind of, and also because I was enjoying it, I'm more open to kind of just letting it go and be like, yeah, why not?
I mean, a movie has you, and so on. Yeah,
boom. Yeah.
I will give it this. I mean, for all my complaining about, how I turn on them as a couple, for two reasons. One, because I like the characters of Riff and Bernardo so much more. And so when they're gone so that we can focus on Tony, I resent Tony for that. And then also it's just such a, what you're saying in real life, I can't fathom this girl hooking up with her brother's murderer like so quickly, right away. But whatever the case, it doesn't matter, because you know what? When you get to the very end of the movie and Tony gets shot and Maria runs to him and she's cradling his head and she starts crying and talking to him, I was like, what are these emotions? I didn't care about this relationship. And suddenly in that last turn of the story, I was just feeling really sad for them. And, you even just now, you just said that's his best moment of performance for him. So there is something, I guess, again, the story grabs you and takes you all the way to that moment, even though it's coming and you're like, fuck, it hurts.
This movie is propped up by its supporting cast because I don't necessarily think she's not bad, but Rachel Zegler, Maria, certainly didn't really do much to blow me away, besides her singing voice is quite impressive. But as you mentioned, Anita is awesome. Bernardo's awesome. Dude, you could even, the dude who played Riff, I mean, it's not like we're dealing with some young prodigy, I don't think, but he could have been in the lead role and I would have been fine with it.
Yes. Yeah. Sell me that romance, like Maria and Riff, those characters. Then you can, then you can understand why Bernardo's so against it.
Yeah.
Those three are really good. I really like Mike Feist. I actually, I was pretty excited. The main reason why I was going to watch Challengers, and I will watch Challengers eventually, is because he's one of the main characters there. Again, like I said, when you watch the original, I don't know, if you come out telling me that you like that riff better than this riff, I would just laugh. Ariana DeBose is amazing. She won the Oscar, so she was like the one big win for this movie, and it felt right. I don't remember who else was nominated that year, but she was. I was happy when it happened. I was like, okay, if it only gets one, I was happy that she got it. And then I looked it up, and it looks like David Alvarez hasn't really done much. Like he has some stage experience, but he hasn't done like any other movies since.
These are the movies that are you'll see things like that. We talked about that way back in the day when we talked about the guy who played Seaweed in Hairspray. Like these types of movies, you're bound to come across folks that have some theater experience, but for whatever reason don't really have too much other big time Hollywood films to hang on their hat on. Whether they don't want it or they just prefer, working on stage, So I guess it shouldn't be surprising for a musical that, because not every actor out there can dance and sing,
Yeah. Hey, can you do us a solid? Can you come in, do this part, and then you can go back to the stage? But he's amazing. He's again, is it a failure of the story? Is it a failure of the staging that I side with Bernardo more than, so much more? Like when I'm watching the story, am I supposed to be conflicted between the Jets and the Sharks? Or am I supposed to be repulsed by both the Jets and the Sharks? Or am I supposed to take a side, and is that side supposed to be the Sharks? Because every time I watch it, and that's not just this version, it's also the original, I always side with the Sharks. Did you find yourself taking sides, or were you just watching the tragedy unfold?
I'm pretty prone in any situation at this point to root against the prejudiced white people.
Yeah, man, they're like more hardcore racists in this version than they could be in the 60s.
They're also not as cool. They can't dance as well. Their songs aren't as good.
I mean, they put up a fight in the Mambo dance number.
I suppose so, yeah.
He's gonna fight, he's gonna dance. I want to dance, goddammit.
I think after the second time I watched this movie, I've always, even from the first time I watched it and when I saw it on stage, I've always had that problem of, man, I can't believe that Anita. I said it in Church Corner, right? I can't believe that Anita forgives Maria for still being in love with the murderer of her boyfriend, her fiance, whatever Bernardo was, and then it clicked for me. I was like, the way you fix it is if you make it clear without going overboard that Bernardo has also killed people, and Anita knows about it, Maria knows about it, and that's why when they're having that song, that confrontation, Anita and Maria tells her, you should know better, you should know as well that I'm in love, then you realize, oh well, that's because Anita was also in love with a killer, and Bernardo might have killed somebody that had a girlfriend just like her, and so on. And so that for me would change everything, make it so much better, because then I understand, why she backs off and decides to embrace Maria. I can still make it work, but man, if somehow they found a way to subtly indicate that, it would be just so much more than what it is right now. But that is, obviously I've thought about this a lot because every time that I've experienced West Side Story, whether it's on stage or the 1961 version or this version, I always have that. I hit that block in that song, and I'm like, how do you make it better? How do you fix this? And so, yeah, my allegiance, in a way, my sympathies definitely lie with the Puerto Ricans, with the Sharks. You're right. I think that the deck might be stacked from the beginning. So, because the cops are racist. The cops are definitely nicer to the white kids than they are to the Puerto Ricans, to the Sharks. But I wonder, right? Like, what happens if you're watching this version of the movie and you don't like Bernardo? Bernardo is just like, he's already a pretty aggressive guy, but he was like a little less charming. How does that story play out? Maybe you side more with Maria, because maybe when Bernardo dies, you're like, well, he had it coming. But the way that it plays out here, when he dies, I was like, damn it. I was really hoping that he would find a way to work it out. He would just like shake Tony's hand and
walked right into it.
Yeah. Now that we're real talk, like, can you even appreciate the boxing? Is he doing something that's somewhat believable? Can you buy that guy as a boxer?
Oh, there wasn't like there was actual like scenes to analyze, because Elgort went in his mount too, throwing those punches, and it's like, I guess those could be damaging because the guy's head's on concrete. If he has nowhere to go, that could definitely fuck someone up. But I don't know. I didn't think enough about it. This is not a movie I watched to analyze the boxing technique of.
He's no Chris Lieben.
He is, goddamn pal. What a reference I could not have predicted as little as a year ago. It's good Hollywood They're good Hollywood punches. That's what I'll say.
There you go. Yeah.
Clearly not enough to get me like as fired up as I already mentioned Tom Hardy and Warrior, but the fight scenes in that movie are enough that I still regularly reference like how annoying I find them, as much as I love that movie.
Boxers get rich.
Boxers get their brains knocked out.
Bossy, como te dije.
Looking towards the conclusion of our episode here on West Side Story, I did send Julio along some materials to watch to briefly cover here.
Dude, that first video you sent me, I was walking to the post office, as I do every day at work. I have to go drop off stuff at the post office. And so on my way back, I was like, oh yeah, that's right, I need to watch this, because I had my earbuds on. And I'm like, what the fuck am I watching? And because I was walking, so it was sidewalk, I wasn't like being careless, but I was walking and I was watching it on my phone. So I'm like, do I know any of these people? I couldn't tell because they're all made up and wearing costumes. So then that final shot when Vince McMahon wakes up, and I was like, oh, I know that guy.
Yeah, I didn't really set the table, so it's not infamous, it's famous. It's one of the more beloved. Every once in a while, the WWE, especially back in the day, would for one of their big pay-per-views kind of adopt the idea of doing like a really fun like commercial or marketing campaign for it. And in 2005, the Royal Rumble, the theme was like it was themed like West Side Story type shit. Like there's going to be a Rumble. And the commercial for it was all the roster of the time and like these really bad wigs. And, they were all comb overs, and they all had like the jeans on with like the shirts tucked in. It looked exactly like, you would think it would. And it's the commercial starts with them snapping and stuff, and they're singing about winning the Royal Rumble. And the highlight of it, in blink and you'll miss it, is Rey Mysterio Jr., who's one of the most famous luchadors, Mexican wrestlers of all time. He wore a mask, of course, and he has a wig on top of his mask. It's very, very great. And the whole punchline is after they get done singing their song, they all run at each other to brawl. And then Vince McMahon wakes up in his bed in a cold sweat, and he looks around and he says, "That's not the Rumble I had in mind." But I remember the poster and the program and the magazine that came out at that time promoting it all had that on it. And so it's one of the more fondly remembered ad campaigns they did for a show. And then secondly, because I can always tie something SNL into these things, we had this more. It is funny, but it's like this weird. I've never really been able to figure out why. It's the November 16th, 1996 episode of Saturday Night Live. It is the one and only time that Robert Downey Jr. hosted. Now, of course.
So he's hosting. I thought that maybe he was a member of the cast.
That was in the 80s. That was for like when they were trying kind of anything in the 80s to get back any like semblance of momentum. He was on the same season that Anthony Michael Hall was on. And so which that didn't work out for either of them, but Anthony Michael Hall's doing all right for himself. And last I checked, I think Bob Downey's doing okay. But yeah, this is the one and only time he hosted. But again, it's Robert Downey Jr. in like the dead center of the 90s. And, you know, you go over the most relevant thing he would have done in proximity to this would have been, I would say, a year prior when Home for the Holidays came out. And because in 96, the only movie he has credited is, I believe this was a straight to video movie that he made with Billy Zane. And so that part has always kind of tickled me, baffled me, however you want to word it. So anyway, the skit is West Side Story, and it's the Cobras and the Panthers, I think. Yeah. And the whole joke of it is they're like game planning for this fight, and musical numbers keep breaking out, and Norm Macdonald is not in on it. He's like, "What the hell are you guys doing?" That's like the whole joke. And he at one point says something like, "I got a song. It's called I Just Got Stabbed by a Puerto Rican." You know, as history has shown with me sending you SNL stuff to prep Julio for episodes, it's kind of hit or miss with you. I thought you would enjoy this and find it kind of funny just for all the players involved and everything.
It was funny. I think that they cut it just before it starts running too long. You know, there's only so many ways you can do this specific joke, and I was mostly distracted in a good way, like entertained by the different faces. It took me a while to recognize Downey. Like I was like, "Is that him? That looks like Downey Jr." But you know. And then, yeah, Will Ferrell shows up, and then Mark McKinney was in the background. That part was interesting. And then, yeah, I mean, his reactions, Norm's reactions to the songs were funny. So it was kind of like what you were saying at the beginning. Like, I don't know. Do you think that there will be people that watch this and they were not familiar with West Side Story and they just didn't get the joke? Because I think even if you're not, you know, you would know that part of it, you know, the snapping and everything else. You'd be like, oh yeah, that's what they do in musicals.
If that was, it feels like a very Norm skit. Like if you told me Norm was involved with the writing of this, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. It's also interesting. I read this thing about, it was just a comment on YouTube. I was like, huh. The person said like, I always thought this was pretty interesting because it was towards the end of Norm's time. And, it's a skit about how he doesn't fit in anywhere. Aww. And it's like, that's kind of like the story of, you know, Norm obviously rightly gets his flowers now, but his whole thing on SNL was he never, especially in skits, it kind of felt like he never really fit in anywhere. But yeah, Downey, I think that's the whole, to me, one of the funny parts about it. I don't know. You could pay Rob Downey enough now to go on SNL and like plie and sing and shit. So that's for me, for people like me who fashion themselves as to call myself like an SNL historian would sound way too pretentious. So I'll just say enthusiast as though that makes it any better. But like that's what makes diving in the archives more fascinating for that, because especially when they caught people at the right time of their career, and that's what I mean here. I mean, he won an Oscar. He's about to make, you know, $7 zillion doing whatever the next fucking Marvel drib he does is. And here he's, like I said, he's doing like twists and dancing and shit and singing and like nervous doing so.
Yeah.
So
he's trying really hard to get that next audition.
It is funny, but like we said, and I think this is an interesting part to kind of bring it home. I mentioned this briefly. Sherry O'Terry, it appears as though she's supposed to be the equivalent of the Anybody's character here. She runs in and Sherry O'Terry, man. Shout out to her. Not too often we talk about her on the podcast. The last time would have been Southland Tales. So not sure when we're going to talk about her again, but always really enjoyed her work.
What should I do?
What should you do? Beat it!
The Anybody's character here, the performer that plays the character here, if I understood correctly, let me just read this to make sure I don't mess up or disrespect anything, but non-binary. So kind of fits for this role in a certain aspect. But honestly, I don't know, man. And that's the thing. Like we talk all the time about how can this like bother you? But there were people that were upset about it.
Dude, I know I know it's a rhetorical question, but it's my response would be the extremely overused meme of like points everywhere.
the one where you use the little star asterisk on each side and it just says gestures broadly.
Yes,
that's kind of the thing of just like So Deadline Hollywood reported that the film was initially banned in all Gulf Corporation Council countries due to the role of Anybody's being a transgender character as played by non-binary actor Iris Menace. In some cases, Disney allegedly refused to make cuts requested by censors. So
well, I hope that's most cases, if not all cases.
Yeah, I was about to say, for as much as I go on and on about my love and admiration for the Disney theme parks, I hope it's never taken, the movies they make, I hope it's never taken away that my message is Disney's a good corporation. But you hear stuff like that, and it's like, all right, at least there's, something there. Yeah, it's one of those things that it was such like a non thing to me. Because also, with the exception of the line we said that could have been like inserted probably somewhere else in the movie, because it was kind of like playing off this character's arc right at a pivotal scene for so many other things going on. I would say this is how we do it. This is how we normalize this shit, is inserting characters, storylines like this and just treat it like it belongs. And, I think a lot of times where sometimes there's missteps is like, not missteps, but an easy way, I should say, to rile people up. This isn't you or I am speaking for, Julio, but sometimes when there's like hyper focus or almost overindulgence to certain aspects like that for a movie to say, hey, we have this. And, representation is needed. So I'm not going to be mad at it. But I watch a movie like this and I'm like, to me, this is how we normalize this shit, is we just treat it as part of a story, and like it's just part of the story. That's what it is. And so, yes, of course, it's always discouraging to see that people don't agree. And also, how much of a fine tooth comb do you have to be watching this movie with to like that be the thing that fucking pushes you over the edge?
Yeah, it's pretty organic. I think that's what I was thinking. The only reason why it jumped out to me was just the idea that, well, I was like, there's no way that this is how it is in the original, because they wouldn't, use some of the language they use or even some of the conflict. Like they wouldn't be so open about it in, a movie made in 1961. I mean, I'll have to rewatch it, but.
Yeah, I should also specify the normality of it not being picked on, but that just that people like this fucking exist and can exist.
Yeah, like I'm thinking in the original, you can probably pick up on the fact that this is somebody that is not happy with the gender role that they've been assigned, but I don't think that it comes to the forefront the way that it comes out here. And like you're saying, it's pretty organic the way it happens, and in fact, it feels extremely truthful for those characters to be so like close-minded and I would say even hateful, towards anybody's character.
The boot fits, man. They don't like people that don't look like them, so
yeah. They can't just like consider anybody being different. So yeah, no, I like it. I think that, and yet as I was watching it, I was, the mythical woke agenda. I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure that was a talking point there, because that's, what people do. So
And once again, we remind our listeners that Julio and myself, two straight men talking about these type of topics, is the definition of irony. But, you know, it's when I was just reading that earlier, it was just bothering me so much because, like, again, it's not like they paused this movie in the middle to, I don't know, do what these people think happens. Oh, it's some drag brunch now. You know, they're reading to kids. It's just something so small. People find a way to get bothered by it. It's very, very upsetting, discouraging. But again, gestures broadly, you know.
She's a girl.
I said I ain't no goddamn girl, you shriveled dick dago panty!
Well, before we close with scores, Alex, I have to ask, favorite musical number? Do you have one?
I really liked the choreography and the whole way the dance scene was pulled off in the community rec center. I guess I don't know what song that was, but
It's the Mambo.
Yeah, but visually and also the message, America. I think that's my favorite piece in the movie. That's the one that Anita leads, like through the streets. Yeah.
Life can be bright in America.
If you can fight in America.
Life is alright in America.
If you're a white in America.
Yeah, that's an amazing musical number. It's really sad. Every time I watch it, I have this struggling emotions, like conflicting emotions, because on one hand, I'm just, you know, in awe of what's happening and just feel very happy that on a meta sense, I feel happy that the actors get to have that number that's just pure joy, and, you know, they get to show off their dancing and all that stuff, and they get to be funny, there's jokes and everything. But then also because I know where the story goes, and I know that by the end Anita has changed forever, right? Like that number is about her being happy to be in America, and then by the end of the movie she's like, fuck it, I'm done. And so it's heartbreaking in advance when you know where the story's going to go. Yeah. You watch this movie and you're like, oh, this is not going to last. This is going to go south in, you know, a day. So it's that's a high contender. But no, I think I always, my top number is always a Tonight number. Not the one, the big ensemble one. Not the one that they sing as, you know, Tony and Maria, when they do their balcony thing, they're singing Tonight. But then the one where the entire cast is singing from different places as they're getting ready to go to the Rumble.
We're gonna rock it tonight. We're gonna jazz it tonight.
We're gonna mix it tonight.
That's always, you know, it gets me pumped because it's like, oh my God, we're building up to the big fight. And I don't know that if I noticed it before, maybe now because I was looking for things that were funny for Contrarian's Corner, I definitely made note of it. I laughed so hard because there's a moment where Maria is singing as she's leaving work, and she's just like in her own head, and she literally walks past either the Jets or the Sharks as they're like getting ready for war and singing. It's like, how does she not even like look as like, hey, that's my brother, or hey, those are the guys that Tony hangs out with? She just, it's like in the shot, you see the Sharks or the Jets walking towards the camera, and then Maria walking on the side, you know, her back to us, walking away. It's amazing. But anyway, yeah, that would be my pick. That song is always a lot of fun. When the first time I saw the show on stage, that was the one I was the most excited about, to see how they would do it. And it was great because you had on the stage, you had a structure that was turning around. It was spinning kind of to show you the different places where they were singing. And it was pretty cool. So that would be my pick. As for scores, Alex, I think I'm going to go with the Full Monty. I think that
my God,
I've always felt like, oh, it's not 5 stars, it's like 4.5, because, you know, the story issues I have with it, and those issues were still there when I watched it this time, but it doesn't matter. You know what I was telling you, like, it got to the end and I was like all in. I felt very sad, and I can rationalize my way through the plot points that bother me. And I mean, it's a little bit like what we talked about with Paul when we did the Saving Private Ryan movie, which, funnily enough, another Spielberg, but just the idea that the older I get, the sadder this story makes me. And that's not a problem with the movie. It's certainly not a problem with me. It's just a problem with the world, right? Yeah. But for a movie to be that effective, I think I just need to give it all the props that I can. The fact that even with the songs that can be happy and the musical numbers that can be very celebratory, in the end, like the undercurrent is still very powerful. And, it applies to today so well. Now that we're in real talk, by the way, I will tell you that I wouldn't be opposed to somebody taking this story and making it happen in the 21st century. I 100% see your point that it could be too much. It would be too in your face. And my main problem with that is that the risk for somebody to just take it too far and just kind of make it really cringy it would be pretty high.
Yeah.
So you would have to get like a master filmmaker to do it. And yeah, maybe that person was Spielberg.
Christopher Nolan.
Man, I want that Nolan musical. But it could be that, Spielberg saw it and he was like, you know what? Nope. Let's just keep it the way it is. But anyway, 5 stars. What's your score?
Somewhere in the B territory. Ansel Elgort is not good. And Ansel Elgort is the lead of this movie.
Bears repeating.
It bears repeating. But it also bears stress because if I'm going to drop this movie and say it's a B-, I don't want that to be indicative of everything. And it's fucking Steven Spielberg. I watched this movie and just based on visuals alone, I was already like, oh shit, we're already 2 hours in. So, for a movie that's, 2.5 hours that you typically think that's a bit of a struggle for me. I did watch it in 2 parts, but that was out of convenience, not necessity. I didn't need a break anywhere. And so it's good stuff. Lead's not good. So I'll say, so in fear of not overrating it after I've enjoyed this conversation a lot, I'll just say B- right now. Maybe translate to like 3.5 stars, somewhere in that. Good movie. I'd recommend it. It's obviously a great story. And yeah, I don't expect the same kind of round optimism with 3 from Hell. I don't think we're both going to have this kind of fun conversation where we talk about the things we really enjoyed about it and whatnot. So I'm glad it worked out here. And it's proof that, I mean, we've watched plenty. I mentioned Hairspray earlier and Grease and shit like that. We've watched plenty of musicals that I enjoy. It's just some that I've come across in this podcasting journey have not been to my liking, but we done good here. I enjoyed this tremendously.
It'll be hilarious if I end up not loving. I mean, let's be realistic. But what if I like 3 from Hell? If I tell you it's the best,
basically, yeah. The not enjoy necessarily, but if you end up saying like this is better than Devil's Rejects or something like that, then we'll be like, oh my god, that's kind of like the payoff. It's not better than Lords of Salem though. That's his masterpiece. 3.5 stars with the very distinct possibility of going up to 4 upon future rewatches, which is as much fun and as much sincerity as I've had in my thoughts with Ansel Elgort. He doesn't even come in close to approaching like so bad that it ruins everything else around him. It's just when he's on screen, I wish he wasn't. That's the extent of it. All right, Julio. So what's coming up next?
Coming up next, now that you have fulfilled your debt, your blood debt to the Livestream for the Cure 2024, it is my turn. And actually mine, we achieved that goal first because I was a $250 tier. So I got screwed first. And then we had to push a little harder to get you to take part of the fun. And so we're done with West Side Story. It's time to hit 3 from Hell, a Rob Zombie movie that I know it exists mainly because you've talked to me about it before. I guess the first time you watched it, perhaps the only time you've watched it.
Correct.
You brought it up in an After Hours. And then I also know our friends from Filmbusters have done an episode on it. So not gonna lie to you, Alex, whatever they said and whatever you said, I mean, I didn't retain a whole lot. I just know the basic characters. I know it's a Rob Zombie movie, and I mostly laugh about the fact that you got me because this is definitely something I wouldn't watch on my own. So 3 from Hell, that's coming up next. It's rotten, so we'll be saying nice things about it. And then on the Patreon feed, the bonus episode for the month of April has been picked/demanded by patron Chas Fisher, who's giving us the Australian thriller, I think, Talk to Me. Don't know much about it. I just know it's fairly recent. It's definitely more recent than another movie that he's picked for us for the main feed later this month. But Talk to Me is the bonus episode. For QVRs, we're going back to individual QVRs. Alex, patron Ryan is giving us, well, he's giving you the movie Sultan, which I hope is a biopic about Jasmine's dad from Aladdin, but it'll probably be something else. And I don't know what I did to Ryan, but he's making me watch Barry Lyndon, which is a Stanley Kubrick movie that I watched a long time ago, and I didn't care for it. It's really long, but it stars Ryan O'Neal. So maybe this is just Ryan wanting me to reassess this movie after my enthusiasm for Ryan O'Neal's performance in Nickelodeon and Paper Moon. I guess we'll see. But Sultan for you, Barry Lyndon for me on QVRs. And then, of course, we have After Hours. Alex, what are you bringing to Contrarian's After Hours this time?
I am bringing the comedy, my friend. I thought it was brand new, but it's been just chilling in the shadows of Netflix for several years. My man Rowan Atkinson, I can't stay away. There's a mini series on Netflix starring him called Man vs. Bee that I binge watched to great joy this week. So we'll be talking about that. What about you?
Well, I was hoping that I'll be able to say, Alex, I'm going to talk to you about the first 2 2025 movies that I've watched, but instead it's just going to be, Alex, I'm going to tell you about the first 2025 movie I've watched, because my original plan was watching Mickey 17 in theaters and then following that up with a Netflix original, The Electric State, both movies that I called out on the recent bonus episode that I recorded with Jordan. We were talking about things that we're excited about 2025. Don't worry, listeners, I will get to The Electric State. But Mickey 17, I did make it because I had tickets, so I had to go see it or lose them. That's the Bong Joon-ho follow-up to Parasite. He won the Oscar, conquered the world with Parasite, and now this movie has been delayed several years. So I was pretty excited it was finally getting a release. So I'll tell you about that. Mickey 17 and Rowan Atkinson versus a bee, like the letter B, or just a bee like the insect?
A bumblebee. Yeah.
A bumblebee. Okay. A transformer?
Yes.
Any of that sounds interesting. Go check out our Patreon channel, patreon.com/Contrarian Prime. Now, Alex, let's get out of here.
Let's do. Welcome to our end credits.
Or as we usually call them, our perennial plugs.
We start off by giving thanks to the Festive Years who provide our opening and closing tracks. They kick us off with Last Stand and take us home with Summer of 99. Be sure to head over to thefestiveyears.com for any and all Festive Years needs.
Our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser is the man behind our logo and all the art you see related to our show. Reach out to him and let him know how much you like that little tomato. His email address is mildemonios@hotmail.com and his website is mildemonios.pe. That's MILDEMONIOS. Hans, thank you for all your support.
For those interested in the regularly absurd world of professional wrestling, Joe and the boys over at latenightgrin.com have you covered. Tell them the Contrarian sent you.
And we like to close with special thanks to our social media team of Zoe Perez and Coriari. Each of the social media accounts we mentioned in the introduction look as good as they do because of their work.
So that'll do it for this episode of The Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.
Just for old time's sake, I really don't